hope. This is a big ship to turn, but it is a ship that we can turn for sure. The Lord has not abandoned me. He has not abandoned our children. He has not abandoned our public schools. We have tried to push him out, but he is there. And he has said, look, you are here for such a time as this.
Check 1, 2. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Grace Bible Church. It's great to have everybody here. We are going to get started right away. I'm not going to interfere. You didn't come to hear from me. I'm one of the associate pastors here at Grace Bible Church. My name's Sergio Fossa. But you came to hear a lot of the speakers give important information on the curriculum and what's going on in the state of New Jersey. So I'll let those folks come up. Let's just get started with prayer. We welcome you to our church if you're new, and hope that you're blessed this evening. Let's bow in a word of prayer. Lord, we thank you for this time that we can gather to learn, to have exposure, to become informed voters. Just as wealth and riches are a stewardship given to us to be used for the glory of God, so also is freedom and liberty and the opportunity of self-government to vote. And as Christians, conservatives, like-minded citizens from all kinds of backgrounds, we want to use that privilege and stewardship wisely, and so we need the information. We do agree with the scriptures that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And so even before we start, we recognize your sovereignty, your lordship, that you are creator and judge, and that you have appointed one and only eternal king. We proclaim even now Jesus Christ, God in the flesh, who lived and walked on this earth, crucified on the cross, risen on the third day, who inherits the nations and who is coming again. And we give you glory for that wonderful gospel. And now as we turn to all this important information, guide our speakers, open our minds and hearts, and teach us important concepts, principles, and information so that we can rightly use the stewardship of self-government with which you have blessed us mightily. We thank you. We commit this time to you for your glory, and it is in the name of Jesus that we pray. We love you. Amen. Amen. All right, well, we welcome again all of our speakers. We're going to get started right away. Bill Spadia, who is leading the Common Sense Club, 101.5 radio talk show host. Excited to have him. Let's have a round of applause, and we're going to hand it right over to Bill.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for the warm welcome. The mission in front of us is so critical, and I know you already know that, and that's why you're here, but I come bearing good news. I have been doing this a long time. Media, politics. I've lived in New Jersey most of my life. I've never seen anything so bad as the school curriculum that they're pushing on your kids. And you're going to learn today about what is specifically written in this curriculum that is so devastating and dangerous to our families, our parents, that just the very idea that the commissioner in the education department and the governor and superintendents in many areas across the state think it's okay for a child, 6, 7, 8 years old, to say to a teacher, I'm not a boy, I'm actually a girl. And the teacher could be fired for not addressing that child with their preferred pronouns. And worse, can't tell the parents. We have gone completely off the deep end. Now, there's good news in that, because when your enemy exposes who they truly are, that's when good people are able to rise up. How many of you knew about what was going on in the schools, and people look at you and say, you're crazy. It can't be that bad. There's no way. It's not that bad. They're not actually talking about how to obtain drugs in the school curriculum in high school. They're not actually talking about how to get gender-affirming surgeries in grade school. Well, guess what? Yes, they are. Yes, they are. But the fact that evil has reared its head and politicians are campaigning on this stuff has given us this incredible opportunity. You know, as I said, I've been doing this a long time, and a lot of people say, when you come up upon an election, how do you vote your values? What really matters? Most people think that in order to get your values across, in order to protect your family, protect your church, protect your school, protect your business, it's top down. We have to elect a new president. Oh, if Trump were only here, it wouldn't be this bad. Or if we had just defeated Murphy in 21, it wouldn't be this bad. I am here to tell you that sometimes it can get worse. I probably don't have to tell you that our churches were shut down while Donald Trump was president. Now, I'm not knocking 45. I think he did an outstanding job, but he missed on a few things, and let me tell you why. Because as Americans, we've lost our way. We no longer talk about the things in our community that matter, the mom and pop stores, who the teacher is, who the counselor is, who's the school principal, who sits on the school board. How many of you knew the names of your school board members last year? Maybe some of you did, if you were on the school board, but nobody else knew who they were. How many of you really know who's the mayor, who's on council? We look at it as that's just a government job and we move on. Well, it turns out it's more than a government job. It's the school boards across this state that are implementing this sickening curriculum. That's what's going on. Teachers are under fire and under pressure because of some unnamed bureaucrat who sits as a six-figure superintendent. That's what's happening. So even if we make changes at the top, that's fine, but who speaks for us at the local level? Who speaks? I met John tonight. He's running for school board in Colts Neck. And he understands that it's all about who serves on that board to stand up for these kids and say, we're done. We're not going to tolerate this anymore. We should, as an adult community, simply not tolerate a discussion of sex acts in grade school. There's no debate on whether or not that's harmful for children. We know it is. You saw this video before. Our friend Greg Quinlan did an outstanding job. I'm just going to say fantastic representation of the values and the fight. It's not about political party. It's not about one election. It is about parents standing up and saying, I don't care if you call me a domestic terrorist or a bigot or anything else. I am going to stand in front of my kids and protect them from you. That's the job that every parent has. Now, in America, we have a great opportunity. And in New Jersey, on Tuesday, we have a great opportunity. And that opportunity is to know who those candidates are running for school board, council, mayor, and judge them. Judge them on their values. Judge them on whether or not they are promoting something good or something evil. We know, we don't have to be told. You don't have to come to a service every Sunday to know. You should. I'm not saying you shouldn't. But you don't have to know what is so obvious to us. It's so obvious that our children are being used as a political pawn so that this elite cabal of corruption that rests in Washington and in Trenton can further their own greed, their own ambition, their own power. They don't care about you. They don't care about your role as a mom or a dad. They don't care. They'll call you names. They'll discredit you. My goodness, we have a White House that has literally labeled parents that go to school board meetings as domestic terrorists. And it happened. And too often, good people who see it don't understand how to fight it because you feel alone. We were isolated on purpose. COVID is a virus. True. COVID kills vulnerable people. True. But we had an entire political agenda to shut down healthy people. Healthy people. You know, in Florida, they protected vulnerable people and they let healthy people live their lives. They did the same thing in South Dakota. Same thing in Sweden. Same thing, believe it or not, in South Korea. Not in New Jersey. Healthy people locked away. Why? To make you feel isolated, like you're crazy. You're crazy. How they treat the Christian faith in this state from our government is absolutely horrible because it is an outright discrimination against people of faith saying, you're the problem. Your faith is actually based in bigotry. You know what? That's not true. And anybody that has read any bit of scripture or come to any service, whether you're going to a Christian service or a Catholic mass, you hear preaching about love and tolerance. and bringing people in. But you know where tolerance, we draw the line? At evil. We don't tolerate evil, we fight evil. And I think for too long, people in New Jersey have said, we can't fight it. How many times have you heard people say, it's too big, there are too many people on the other side? And I am on the radio every morning, and I can tell you with the largest audience in the state, I hear it every time I bring it up. People say they have an exit plan. I'm out of here in. I have one guy, Greg from Freehold. I don't think he's here tonight. He has a countdown. So he calls every couple weeks. He said, all right, I'm out of here in 2 years, 8 months, and 7 days. And I'm like, Greg, that means I have 2 years, 8 months, and 7 days to fix this place so we can keep you here, because I'm tired of losing good people to other states where they recognize parental rights and freedom. We saw a new governor elected in Virginia, despite it being a blue state, flipped completely around with almost 6 in 10 voters turning out to vote their values. What were those values? Very simple. Parents have rights. Parents should raise children, not union bureaucrats and school superintendents. Period. End of sentence. And Glenn Youngkin stood up and stood strong and said no more. Ron DeSantis in Florida did the same thing. Kristi Noem in South Dakota did the same thing. Carrie Lake is going to be the new governor in Arizona. She's going to do the same thing. Doug Mastriano will be the new governor in Pennsylvania, going to do the same thing. Lee Zeldin in New York will be the new governor, most likely, and do the same thing. I hope so. He's got to hang in there. Because the other side, everything that they told you you were crazy to think, they're doing. We're going to shut your business down for 2 weeks to stop the spread. It's fine. It's fine. You know, half the Catholics out there, and I say this as a Catholic, we're like, we missed Mass for a couple of weeks. It's okay. I'll sleep in on Sunday. Then you realize 2 weeks was 2 months. And then 2 months was 6 months, and then 6 months was 2 years. And in some places around this state, we've never gotten back to normal. Do you know 1/3 of our businesses never reopened after they shut down during COVID? But we have a problem, and the only way to fix it is ground up. I think it'll be wonderful to elect a new state senate in 2023 and a new governor in 2025, but none of that matters if we don't get moms and dads on school boards who believe like we believe, that mom and dad still matter, that our identity as mothers and fathers and men and women and, yes, children identifying as boys and girls, guess what? That's a good, natural idea. And the fact that the bureaucrats are coming at that, what's their real agenda? It's certainly not about education. It's not about fighting bigotry, because they have no problem practicing that bigotry against communities of faith. They'll come at us. It's time we stand up, we fight back, and we stand for normalcy. Normalcy, stand up for parents, stand up for our great Constitution. This country is wonderful. And too many people disparage it. And they didn't stop there. They kept going right on down. The small business, the family, they're now coming at your 7-year-old and saying, you might be born in the wrong body. Guess what? That is simply not true. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Pastor Sergio, for having me here. Greg, thank you for the great work you're doing. I appreciate all of you. As a parent, as a patriot, as a citizen, as a taxpayer, I can tell you we all need to vote our values. We need to vote those values on Tuesday, and we need to start at the local level. The school board makeup is going to be more important than who the U.S. Senator is in 2024. I can promise you that. So thank you all for being here. You're going to have a great night tonight. The information you're going to see, try not to get too depressed. Know that help is on the way. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to let one of you hold that. Okay, great. Am I on? I don't know if I'm on or not. Well, I have a big mouth, so it doesn't matter. I'm Greg Quinlan. I'm with the Center for Garden State Families. We're a Christian family advocacy organization, and it worked. Okay, me and tech. There's a button here, and I'm liable to set off bombs somewhere around the world. So I just want to make sure it worked. We're going to go over some quick things right here. We are in our 7th year. We came about because there was another organization that was dying pretty fast. There was actually there was sin there. So we started the Center for Garden State Families. We're a Christian family advocacy organization, and we are not ashamed of that. And I want to go on and just say, too, I want to thank this church. I want to thank Grace Bible Church for opening up their doors and for allowing this to come forward, for preaching the gospel and parental rights. And I'm just so grateful for Pastor Sergio and all the other people here at this church who volunteered and put this together. So I want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you so very, very much. Now, this is participatory. Some of you may have heard this before, but we're going to give you the whole enchilada this time. We had a very small part. So if you already know, then you know what you need to do. No one can leave the building. There's no potty breaks, no nothing, unless you pass these tests. And there are 3 of them. Everybody got that? Okay, here we go. Now, the mission of the Center for Garden State Families is that we are here to protect and promote faith, freedom, and the natural family, and culture and public policy is held by the traditional Christian worldview, or what I really should say is the biblical worldview. Natural families defined by Jesus Christ, quoting Genesis. Let me set this up. Now, this is where the Pharisees are trying to trap Jesus in, and always trying to trap Jesus. By the way, a Pharisee, that wasn't an elective you took in college. A Pharisee, you were born to be. You were born to be a Pharisee. You started at age 4 to memorize the Torah, all 600 laws of the Old Testament. We would call that child abuse today, but they actually started at 4 to get a child to memorize something, all right? So, this is where Jesus is being a little bit of a smart aleck because he knows they know, and they know he knows they know, but here's how the thing came down. Here's the question. Rabbi, is it lawful for a man to leave his wife for any and every reason? Jesus comes back and says, haven't you read? Duh. I know you've read it, and you know I know you've read it. So, here's his answer. And he answered to them and said, have you not read, duh, that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female? Let's stop right there. How did he make them? That was really weak. Let's try again. How did he make them? That's right. You're not in bed yet, so let's act like you got a little bit of energy. Okay, male and female. That's right. Man and woman. Masculine and feminine. The sperm and the egg. It was Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve and Eve and Edith. Right? All right? That's not insulting. I'm not here to disparage anybody. I'm saying that for clarification. It's very clear. It's man and woman. Next it says, and said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother. Now, who's he leaving? His father and mother. The man and the woman. The masculine and the feminine. By the way, how did he get here? Yeah, it took mommy and daddy to make him. Oh, really? We got a lot to teach here tonight. Wow. Okay. So, yes, it took his mother and father to make him. That's how he got here. Mommy and daddy, 2 women in and of their own biological stuff cannot make another human being. 2 men in and of their own biological stuff cannot make another human being. It takes a man and a woman, a sperm and an egg. And then he goes on and says, and be joined to his wife. Who's he joined to? That's right. Not his boyfriend. She's not joined to her girlfriend. And by the way, he's leaving his mother and father, not his 2 mommies. He's not leaving his daddy and daddy's roommate. So, and he's being joined to his wife, the masculine to the feminine, the man to the woman. And then it says this, and the 2 shall become one flesh. You know what that means? That means they had sex. He's in church and he said sex. Yes, I did, because God made it, not Hugh Hefner. It was God's idea, not Larry Flint's. And it's about time we took it back. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, and it's sacred, and it's supposed to be never experienced until you're married. And there's science behind this. Besides the dopamine and the serotonin, there's this other hormone called oxytocin. When it was first discovered, it was called the monogamy hormone. Well, that's not politically correct, so they call it the bonding hormone. It's the same hormone that's excreted when a mother breastfeeds her baby, and the baby excretes it too. It actually helps you, your brain wiring, to your partner, to your husband, or to your wife. You truly do become one flesh. That's God's design. And it's Satan's job, and we're doing a real good job of messing up God's design. Therefore, and then they are no longer 2, but one flesh. Therefore, what God is joined together, let no man separate. Pay attention here to this definition. Jesus Christ, perfect God and sinless man in one body, defined marriage, defined family, defined sex. Do you see LGBTQIA-XYZ anywhere in here? No, you don't. Why do I say it that way? Because they've tripled the alphabet. Now, here's a little background about me. This is the way I do it in front of the school boards. My sexual identity is ex-gay, and my pronouns are biologic. And you should see some of these people when I say that. They don't know what to think. Yes, I lived 10 years of my life as an out and open homosexual. I became a homosexual activist because of the AIDS epidemic. I'm a nurse. I started as an LPN, which stands for lousy paid nurse, and then I became an RN. I watched 100 of my friends and acquaintances die of AIDS before I quit counting. Many more since then. They would ask me questions like, am I going to hell? Would you read my favorite Bible verse at my funeral? Would you do my eulogy? Would you tell my son and daughter what happened to Daddy? And I did all those things. So I'm not coming at this from a perspective of, I hate gays. No, I love you enough to tell you the truth, because I know you aren't born this way, and I can tell you that you can change just like I did. You have to choose to change. The point is, I accepted the manufacturer's guidelines, and I've chosen to follow them. Oh, next slide. That's such a happy accident. Every time I see it, I'm so glad I did it. I don't know what I did, but that's really cool. First liberties, this is who we're about. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, right of assembly, the redress of grievances, opposing the alleged special rights of sexual minorities, of the LGBTQIA-XYZ. So, let me go over this just real quick. In the First Amendment are 40 words. There are 5 freedoms in the First Amendment. But that first one, freedom of religion, gets special attention. A few years back, after New Jersey, through a judge decision in 2013, made gay sex legal. It wasn't on the books until just this last December, but made gay sex legal. Rutgers Law School in Newark was putting together a panel and asked me to be on it. It was one of those very balanced Phil Donahue type panels. 9 of them, 3 of us, and the moderator was pro-gay too. So, and it was really a lot of fun. I'm not bragging or anything, but I want to tell you, I mopped the floor of the Lambda legal attorney. That's the lesbian attorney. She was just dumber than a box of rocks. But anyway, so it was kind of fun because nothing she said made any sense. So we did it. We made it through, and at the end there was Q&A. And this girl came up, and she could have been an attractive girl, but she's clearly identified as a lesbian, and she started attacking me. It's because of your religion. It's because of your Bible. It's because you're a Christian that you don't want us to be married, da-da-da. I said, hold on a minute. Nobody introduced me as a reverend, even though I've got the title. I never said anything about being a Christian. I didn't read a single Bible verse. So I don't know where you're coming from. So let me ask you a question. I said, have you read the First Amendment? Yes. Okay. Can you quote it? Dead air. Okay? Can you tell me the first freedom in the First Amendment? Freedom of speech. Wrong. It's freedom of religion. The first 16 words, 1/3 of the First Amendment is dedicated to that first liberty, the freedom of religion. So why does freedom of speech follow freedom of religion? Why do the forefathers, those brilliant, learned men, do it that way? It's because you don't have the freedom to speak without the freedom to believe. And they knew it. And that's why they did it this way. We have such ignorance about who we are and where we came from, just the way Bill Spadea said it. All right, so then there are the other, freedoms that are there, but I just wanted to express that one. So this is who we are. This is our 5 areas of focus. That's number 1. Number 2 is life. First liberties mean nothing if you're dead. Abortion, all life has value. From conception to natural death, end of life, assisted suicide, caring for the terminally ill, stop the funding with tax dollars of abortion and assisted suicide. The first time I was here was on the Reproductive Freedom Act. We talked about that. The Center for Garden State Families, we are pro-life from conception to natural death. This is who we are. These are fake pumpkins. Oh, fancy stuff. Education, that's why we're here. Education is dependent upon what? Parental rights and education choice. If socialist Finland can have absolute school choice, then why in the world can't the United States of America? Huh? Why not? The epoch, however they pronounce it, he calls it epoch, had an article in there about Finland and their school choice and how successful it is. They have some of the highest rates, not just graduation rates, but proficiency rates of any nation on earth. And they have absolute school choice. How about that? One of the things that we need to do is we need to change the state constitution. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, about how bad things are with our state constitution, how the governor's made a dictator because of it, which is why we're in the position that we're in. But we need to change and amend our state constitution, and one of the things we need to add is absolute school choice and a parental rights amendment. Taxes. I don't think anybody's going to argue with me in this. In the Garden State, taxes are oppressive. These taxes are destroying property rights, family stability, and the present and future security of the individual citizen. So much so they can't wait to get out of here. But I got news for you. Even if you have an exit planned, you better be voting right now. Right now. Because as long as you're here, you're paying, and you're paying a lot. And we are the only organization that claims to be Christian that supports the Second Amendment. Why? Because we believe in the right of self-defense, and it's biblical. Okay, it worked. All right. Parents need to know that there is an intentional global assault on your children's education from pre-K to grade 12 and beyond. There are multiple agendas disguised as sex education to protect them from sex traffickers, prevent disease and pregnancy. That's a lie. It doesn't protect them. But we'll talk to you about that later. Critical race theory is real and being pushed overtly and covertly in government schools. Notice, we don't call them public schools. We call them government schools. Because the public is being pushed out, the government is in control, and other organizations are in control of the government telling them how to do education. Some of you know who they are. The NJEA, the New Jersey Exploitation Association, the NEA, the AFT, the American Federation of Treachery. Anyway, they're all there. They're completely lost their way. Did you know that the NEA was originally founded by Christians, and the Christian women who founded it shared Bible verses and recipes when they first started? Not anymore. Okay, picture an octopus with its large head and array of tentacles which grabs its prey, crushes, and then consumes it. The head of the octopus is compared to the monumental effort to destroy the natural family, and its tentacles can be likened to the following list, which has deeply infiltrated government education in the Garden State and the nation. Critical race theory, comprehensive sexuality education, which means teaching alternative sexual activity versus the more traditional sex and abstinence education. SIECUS, get a note of this. SIECUS has been around a while. Sexuality Information and Education Council of the U.S. and SIECUS New Jersey, which is now referred to as Sex Ed for Social Change. That should scare you. The LGBTQ agenda, normalizing all types of sexual behavior, identities, and sexual rights, the right to engage in sex regardless of age. Regardless of age. Social and emotional learning, and we're going to hear about that later, which is related to CRT and the LGBTQ agenda. You'll notice that all of this is intertwined. It's almost hard to separate any of it out by itself. Databases such as EBSCO and Gale used to research in schools, which connects students to sexually graphic materials such as sexual predators, human sex traffickers, and access to your children. By the way, this is a XXX movie theater, and your children can watch the worst of the worst, not pay for it, and all they have to do is say they're 18. Be aware of what your children, your grandchildren, your nieces and nephews, the kids in your Sunday school class are looking at. Media materials are such as sexually graphic fiction books are in school libraries. The Center for Garden State Families is committed to informing you that what is actually happening with your child's education. This guy, John Dewey, the father of modern education, the great task of the school is to counteract and transform those domestic and neighborhood tendencies, the influence of home and church. Then he goes on to say, there is no God, there is no soul, hence there are no needs for the props of traditional religion. It gets better. Yeah, this guy. He's got a bronze statue north of where I grew up in Xenia, Ohio, in Yellow Springs at Antioch University. They didn't tear that one down or deface it. Anyway, Horace Mann, the father of American public schools, a devout humanist. Parents have given the kids as hostage to our cause. Now, I am 64 years old. I know I look 34, but I'm really 64 years old. And when I went to school, back in the 60s, it was a whole different environment. We could go to school in jeans, the boys could. The girls had to wear a dress. They had to wear a skirt or something. But the boys, we could, but we couldn't go with holes in it. So, we had the iron-on patches, you put over the knees because we wore the knees out. Some of you remember that, you're smiling. So, yeah, those days, discipline was there. We were quiet in class. We started with prayer. We started with a Pledge of Allegiance. And Mrs. May had a paddle in her desk drawer. And we knew it, because there was one boy in the class that I think liked to get paddled. And she knew how to swing it. It had holes drilled into it, too. It made noise. So it scared you. And you behaved in class. Because if you didn't behave in class and you got in trouble at school, the teacher called your mom and dad, and you got in trouble again at home. So you behaved. It's a whole different environment now. The philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation is the philosophy of government in the next. Abraham Lincoln. Do you remember those hippies, Bill and Hillary Clinton? Wow, that philosophy wound up in the White House. Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted. Vladimir Lenin. This is a Marxist agenda we are fighting. This isn't just a political statement. They're not ashamed of saying so. This is a socialist, Marxist agenda. It's in your government schools that your taxes are being used to supplement and pay for, and your children are the targets. How do you tell a communist? Well, it's someone who reads Marx and Lenin. How do you tell an anti-communist? It's someone who understands Marx and Lenin. Some of you may remember, since you're my age, Nikita Khrushchev. We will take you over from within, and you'll never know what happened. We're here. That's exactly where we are. We're here. What does the mental health community say about homosexuality? There are no replicated scientific studies supporting any specific biologic etiology for homosexuality. The American Psychiatric Association. Now, this is the MDs. They're the ones that do the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. This was done in May of 2000. They have not changed that quote. They have not deleted that quote. They have not done anything more to that quote. They kind of buried it a little bit, but it's still, you can still find it on their website. Why haven't they changed it? Why didn't they delete it? Because there is still no replicated scientific studies supporting any specific biologic etiology for homosexuality. Not a single cause, but it gets better. And remember, this is May 2000. The Human Genome Project. Now, the Human Genome Project was done under Bill Clinton to pay back the Human Rights Campaign Fund. This was an organization. It's the largest gay and lesbian political organization in the country. It ranks as the 9th largest of all independent political action committees and chiefly responsible for the billions of dollars in AIDS research and support money that comes from the federal government. I still remember the commercial. I was with them. They trained me how to do grassroots activism, how to read legislation, how to lobby my elected official. So essentially what the devil trained me to do, I'm now using for the Lord. Praise God. So they wanted this study because everybody thought there had to be a gay gene. Even Christians thought there had to be a gay gene. Well, here's what happened. Dr. Francis Collins, head of the Human Genome Project, just retired from NIH, CDC, in his book, The Language of God, stated after this 13-year, multi-million-dollar, hundreds and hundreds of researchers, quote, homosexuality is not hardwired. Well, that can't be right. That's just wrong. And so the gays disavowed this study. Why? Because Francis Collins is a practicing Catholic. So he was just too biased. So they had to be wrong. So let's keep going. Oh, here's 2 more people. Sexuality and gender. Lawrence S. Mayer and Paul R. McHugh, MD, retired psychiatrist in chief at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Paul McHugh, when he first came to Johns Hopkins University was the first university in North America to do sex reassignment surgeries. He stopped it. In the press conference where he stopped it, you know what he said? This is akin to inducing vomiting to an anorexic. Didn't fix anything, doesn't stop the problem. In fact, they become more suicidal and more depressed after they have the reassignment surgeries because they're still unfulfilled and unhappy. Because it's just an outward thing you do. It doesn't address the problem of your heart and your head. So they did a study. The study in a nutshell looks at the concepts of heterosexuality, homosexuality, and bisexuality represent distinct, fixed, and biologically determined properties of human beings. Concludes that anything other than heterosexuality is not supported by any viable replicated science as biologic, genetic, or innate. Another nail in the coffin. But they didn't accept that either. Why? Because Lawrence Mayer was Jewish, practicing conservative Jew. And then Paul R. McHugh, well, he's Roman Catholic, and so they were too biased, so the study's wrong. Then came this. And there's more studies. There's the twin studies, replicated now, been replicated at least 6 times. We're now looking at a pool of 25,000 identical twins, which still proves that the causality has nothing to do with your genetics, because if one identical twin is gay and the other identical twin is straight, then how in the world can it possibly be genetic? It's not. Once upon a time back in Ohio, when I was counseling 2 twins, a set of twins, 2 people, set of twins, parents brought them to me. They were 12, and so I was talking to them together, and then I talked with them separately, and then I discovered that the one boy went to a friend's house where they were watching porn, and there he was sexually molested. Then the boy went back to his brother and, showed him what happened at the other house. Neither one of them were gay. They were exposed to pornography. By the way, pornography is as addictive as heroin. The same neural pathways take place with heroin as they do with watching pornography. And it is destructive to relationships. No single gay gene. This is the study, the Gana study. If you wanted to take a picture of that, or I can send you the link, you can look at it. This is the study. Hundreds and hundreds of researchers on 3 continents. Some of them identified as LGBTQIA-XYZ. So a multiplicity of doctors and researchers. It's called the Gana study because Gana was the person who headed it up, and I think that's a female, a woman. What the study did, 477,000 human genomes were studied. That's almost 500,000. I don't know of a study. I have some science background being a nurse. I don't know a study with a sampling like that. That's massive. That's crazy. That's huge. That's bigger than Newark. 23andMe and UK Biobank were the source of the genetic material, and if you did your spittle, did your little swab test, and you sent it into that company to find out what you already knew, that you were Italian or you were Irish or you had this or that, and like I did, I knew I had a little bit of American Indian in me, and it proved it. And then I paid them to tell me what I already knew and gave them my DNA. Stupid. Okay. Now, MIT, Massachusetts, Institute of Technology, University of Queensland, Australia, Harvard University. That's who did that study. Now, I love this. Some of you know who this is. Camille Paglia, lesbian activist, feminist, professor at somewhere in Pennsylvania, in Philly. Homosexuality is not normal. On the contrary, it is a challenge to the norm. Nature exists whether academics like it or not. I love that line. Nature exists whether you you eggheads like it or not. So then it says, and in nature, procreation is the single relentless rule. That is the norm. Our bodies were designed for reproduction. No one is born gay. The idea is ridiculous. Homosexuality is an adaptation, not an inborn trait. No one is born gay. No one is born gay. No one is born gay. Lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or any of the other myriad of things that they've come up with. Everything that's LGBTQIA-XYZ is a developmental gender identity disorder. Developed, not innate, acquired, not inborn. Teacher, student, sex allegations hit academic proportions. Now, I'm going to show you a video. This is not a condemnation on all teachers. This was not done by Fox or Newsmax or Christian Broadcasting Network. It was done by Inside Edition, which I believe is Headline News, which is CNN, the Communist News Network. So, and volume.
Nothing to do with the Ebola crisis. It's a wave of teachers accused of sex crimes. In fact, an independent group estimates 1 in 10 children will be the victim of teacher sexual misconduct. What's going on and why is it happening? Les Trent goes looking for answers.
What the heck is going on? It seems like every week another young, attractive female teacher is charged with having sex with her students. Just last week in Louisiana, 2 teachers, that's right, 2 teachers, were arrested for a shocking sex crime, allegedly having 3-way sex with a 16-year-old student after the school's Friday Night Lights football game.
No matter what sex the victim is, everyone should be outraged.
The teen bragged to friends about the menage a trois, claiming he'd captured it on videotape.
We've heard the same rumors. We're trying to obtain any evidence we have.
Lauren, what were you thinking?
That's the same question just about everyone in Kingston, Pennsylvania is asking. 32-year-old married English teacher Lauren Harrington Cooper was recently convicted of having sex with at least 2 students, enticing them with the line, "All the candy you need is right here."
Lauren has been diagnosed with some significant psychological issues.
Her attorney says that despite her good looks, the teacher's low self-esteem led her down the road to ruin.
She found comfort and solace in some people giving her attention.
HLN host Jane Velez Mitchell.
It's an epidemic of student-teacher sex. Let's call it what it is.
There's more.
Raise your right hand to be sworn in.
Would you believe that's another English teacher? She's 29-year-old Jennifer Fichter, and she's been charged with having sex with 3 students from 3 different schools. She allegedly claims that one boy got her pregnant and she had to get an abortion. She's pleaded not guilty to all charges.
6 years ago, she was forced to resign from another teaching job after she revealed that she allegedly had feelings for a 14-year-old boy. Why didn't she lose her license to teach?
We're not done yet. In Utah, yet another English teacher, 35-year-old Brianne Altice, is accused of having sex with her 16-year-old student in, of all places, a church parking lot. She's pleaded not guilty.
They can feel important, they can feel desired, they can feel powerful, they can have control. But they're pedophiles if they do this.
Incredibly, the U.S. Department of Education does not track cases of teacher sexual misconduct. A study by the department 10 years ago found 4.5 million children then were subjected to inappropriate behavior ranging from suggestive talk to exposure to pornography and rape.
Can you imagine what would happen if the Department of Education actually tracked this? Can you imagine what the numbers would be? Why aren't they tracking this? Why isn't the Justice Department, the Department of Education, any of these groups, why aren't they tracking this? It's a really good question. You should start asking your state legislators whether they're Democrat or Republican. Grooming. Grooming is an insidious predatory tactic. utilized by abusers. Grooming is practiced by narcissists, antisocial predators, con artists, and sexual aggressors who target and manipulate vulnerable people for exploitation. Child grooming is the deliberate act of establishing an emotional bond with a child to lower the child's resistance. This comes from a group called Out of the Fog. These are the adult survivors of child sexual abuse. This is the definition they wrote, and it's the best one I've ever seen on grooming. You will also find it in one of your handouts, the one with titled Fact Sheet at the top. The medical dictionary, the constellation of psychological manipulation and actions taken by a predatory adult meant to reduce a child's fears and inhibitions as a prelude to sexual abuse or exploitation by the predator or his or her associates. This reminds me so much how they say, this is to protect children from predators and to protect children from human traffickers. No, it doesn't. It prepares them for a predator. It prepares them for a human trafficker. Why? Because their inhibitions are reduced. They have knowledge they cannot handle, knowledge they should not know, and knowledge they can't control. Now there's this video. Please watch us and watch the hand motions of this little boy. It's called the woke toddler.
Is for ally. E is for bye. C is for coming out. D is for drag. E is for equality. F is for family. Uh-oh, we missed the code. G is for game. H is for hope. I is for intersex. J is for joy. K is for cookie. L is for lesbian. M is for nothing. N is for non-binary. O is for orientation. Very good. P is for hands. Q is for I don't know. That's okay. Q is for queer. R is for respect.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
S is for sachet. T is for plans. Good. U is for unique. V is for rogue. You know how to vogue? Yeah, you do? Yeah. That was pretty good. Okay, turn the page. W is for wonder. X is for X. Y is for you. And Z is for zest. Zest. E-N. What was the name of this book? The ABCs. You like this book? Yes. Are you a woke toddler? Yes. Can you say, I'm woke? I'm woke.
If you notice the hand motions on that child is on the spectrum. It makes this worse. This child doesn't know what they're reading or the terms that he's been given, but he's being conditioned and groomed. And somebody, the mother or whoever this is doing the grooming. The 2026 Ed Learning Standards, an extreme departure from 2016. 2.1.5 PGD4 explain common human sexual development and the role of hormones. For example, romantic and sexual feelings, masturbation, mood swings, timing of pubertal onset. Your handouts. Let me show you what page this is on. This is in 5th grade. It's on page 30? Oh, that 30. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, yes, I need to explain something to you while we're at this here. The information that you have in front of you will have 2 page numbers on it. The top right-hand corner is our page number. The bottom right-hand corner is the page number from the Department of Education. We did not alter this material from the Department of Education. We did not change it. All we did was lift it, put it on a piece of paper, and highlight the ugly. So we have not altered, amended, or changed this material, just so you know. Why can't I? Oh, there's page 30. Duh. Here's how you read this. You see the 2.1.5? PGD, 5 means 5th grade. The 2.15 means 5th grade. And you will see that right here on our page 5. It's the second one highlighted, and you can see it there. Masturbation. Masturbation. How do you teach masturbation? There was a piece of legislation at the State House for which I went to testify. A guy named Vin Gopal has no education background, but he's the chair of the Education Committee in the Senate. He put together a hastily bill which was not yet published, was not ready for the public to look at, but they went ahead and had a hearing on it anyway and wanted to vote it out. But thanks, because we have connections with legislators, they had the draft copies and they sent them to me. Section 3 of this Transparency in Education Act. What a cute name. Really. Here's what it did. It looked like it was giving the parents the right to look at all material. Actually, by law, federal and state, you have the right to look at all material right now. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But what happened is that Section 3 of that law actually took the standards from the Department of Education and put them into law. Put them into law. They would have codified these vulgar, nasty things. I remember in committee I sat there and said, so I want to know something as I read the masturbation part. Would you mind telling me how they're teaching masturbation? And since these standards suggest that they have to be able to demonstrate what they've learned, I want to know how they're going to demonstrate how they learned masturbation and who's going to watch the demonstration. Who's going to record it? Oh, now, Reverend Quinlan, that's not what it means at all. That's what it says. That's what it says. Can't you read too? That's what it says. By the way, because we testified on this, now I'm very humble about that, though, but we killed that bill. We killed it. I know. No, that's okay. No. Anyway, so I just wanted you to understand this, because we're going to refer to this several times in the presentation as we go deeper in, just so that you know. Anal sex. See that on the board? I'm in a church and we're talking about this. Bill Murphy's DOE mandates anal sex education starting in 8th grade. Now, go back to page... Which one is it, Gay? Okay, our page 9, their page 34. Thank you, Gay. Okay, I'm going to brag on Gay in a minute when I introduce her. Okay, it actually has this in here, and it isn't just a suggestion. It's not a for example part. It actually says oral, anal, and vaginal sex. Which one is it, Gay? I'm missing. Oh, there it is. It's just one little sentence. It is in this last little box here on page 9. It is the third one from the top. It's actually the middle one. 2.1.8 SSH 0.9 define vaginal, oral, and anal sex. And then the schools have to come up with the curriculum to meet the standard. Let me give you some quick biology here as a nurse. The alimentary canal begins at the mouth and ends at the anus. The anus is designed as an exit, not an entrance. So, what are we doing here? It gets better, folks. I want you to look at something else. It gets really good. I'm jumping the gun here. I'm going to wait. This is where I interrupt Kay, and her presentation will go through that. So I want you to know that this stuff is here. It's extremely graphic, very plain. And what does this have to do with equipping your child to become an engineer or a business manager? How does this teach them what they need to know in the business world, in life later? What happened to the 2 years of learning loss that kids got because of COVID? They're not addressing that. They're doing this. This was proposed and lobbied for by Phil Murphy's wife, Tammy Murphy. On Wednesday, June the 3rd, 2020, the New Jersey State Board of Education approved the new learning standards, a practice that occurs every 5 years. Typically, these exercises are pro forma. Standards, after all, align with what used to be called Common Core, and votes are traditionally unanimous, but it didn't happen this time. Instead, board members were split, and the final vote was 8-4. Why? According to Vice President Andrew Mulvihill, which is being replaced by the governor now, there was some consternation about the 65-page section on the comprehensive health and physical education, which had the most changes from the 2015 learning standards. Among a number of the additions is the one on page 34 that will be taught in 8th grade, defined vaginal, oral, and anal sex. They had a problem with that, and I'm glad they did. The New Jersey State Board of Education, these are the ones that voted for that. You'll see over here who voted against it and who voted for it. In case you know any of these people, thank the ones that should be thanked. Have a nice conversation, but direct conversation with the ones who voted for it, if you know them. Everybody get that? Okay. Pre-K Our Way. Oh, this is a dandy. Pre-K Our Way is a program by which you, is a nonprofit organization that lobbies the state government to take your tax dollars and start preschools in certain school districts across the state. Sounds like an okay idea, right? Most of it on the surface sounds okay, but you know the phrase, the devil's in the details? Well, here's where the devil is in these details. All right? So, can't find much information on what qualifies you for a Pre-K Our Way program, but they did it. We had a donor. Notice past tense, had. She owned a preschool, really nice preschool. She expanded the preschool to accommodate the contract that she got with a local school district. So they came in for the inspection. She passed the inspection. By the way, there's a strange little thing here. Your Pre-K Our Way population, supplemented by your tax dollars, has to be separated completely and entirely from your paid population in your preschool. Isn't that really, there's segregation there, and it's designed and defined. So anyway, so she passed the inspection with flying colors. Everything was going great, and then at the very end of the inspection, the inspector turned around and looked at her and says, "Where is your bathroom for the transgender children?" Preschool. The oldest child in a preschool is 5. They're not thinking about being born in the wrong body unless somebody puts that idea in their head. She sold her went home that night, told her husband, "We're selling. We're getting out. We're moving to South Carolina." They did. These are the people on it. Now, obviously, James Florio isn't on there anymore since he's now gone, but these are the people who are on this program. Part of this board of directors to do all of this stuff. So I need to start asking some of them, if I can ever get a hold of one of them, and find out what's going on here. Why is this a requirement? Are you actually using the Pre-K Our Way program to promote gender confusion and identity confusion to preschoolers? Now, let me introduce you my cohort, one of my cohorts in crime. I have others. I've been adding more. So, this is Gabriella Brandil, Director of Education for the Center for Garden State Families. Now, she goes by the name Gay, and as she introduced herself at our board meeting, the first one we had, she says, "My name is Gay, but I had the name before they did." So, just want to let you know, this is Gabriella Brandil. The right button makes it go that way, and the other button on the left makes it go the other way.
Okay, so I want to go right. I always knew I wanted to go right.
Okay. Okay, great.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg. Thank you, everyone, for coming. My background is that I was an elementary teacher for 32 years in northern New Jersey in several districts. I taught mostly primary grades, but also 5th grade. And I also worked with children in grades K through 6, implementing their individual education plans, IEPs, or they're commonly known as. And I did that for 32 years and have been retired for quite a long time. I started feeling that I was kind of like a dinosaur, that the things that I thought were important and the ways in which I thought teaching should be done were changing. And so for many years I've been retired. I cared for a lot of family members, and back 7 years ago, Greg asked me if I would be on the board of the Center for Garden State Families, and knowing that I had an education background, I decided that that was probably a very good move for me to make. So I have been working with a lot of information for about the last 2 years, especially since COVID came, and we were blessed with some office space, so I've been able to do a lot of research, and I'm still getting a lot of information into my office, and we are working with parents and trying to be supportive of what they are trying to do and trying to find out what is going on in their local school district. And for many reasons, it's become quite complicated. But basically, I did find the sex ed standards on the Department of Education site. And as Greg has pointed out some specifics, the standards are really based on the National Sexuality Standards, and that's comprehensive sexuality information, and it is an international movement to sexualize children, to desensitize them towards things sexual, and really there's a more sinister motivation. It is really to break down the traditional family, break down the biblical family values, and to separate parents from the values of their children. It may not seem that the school system of 20, 30, or 40 years ago was motivated to do this, but really that's what I have found in my research has been happening. I'll just try to do what I can to move along. Okay. Education in New Jersey. We have several things going on. The LGBTQ curriculum, the sexualization of children, critical race theory, social and emotional learning, and public health mandates. The public health mandates were what you had gone through as family members, as far as children wearing masks, children not being able to attend a brick and mortar building, and having a lot of their instruction going on at home. The planned indoctrination and desensitization of your children is really what's going on, as much as we may not like to believe that it is happening. There are two things that I'm going to primarily focus in on, and I have put a sheet of paper comparing the two laws and the results of those two laws. The first one was in 2019, the A1335 or S1569, known as the History of Disabled LGBTQ Persons Contributions Law, was passed. And this law requires middle and high school curricula to address the political, economic, and social contributions of persons with disabilities and lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people where appropriate. And that means throughout all of the instruction in middle and high school. Part 1 lays out the requirement for this instruction, and Part 2 requires policies and procedures to be in place when selecting instructional materials excuse me, which are inclusive and which portray the cultural and economic diversity of society. Parents cannot opt out of this curriculum, as it's deliberately woven throughout almost every subject and will begin this fall. It actually began in some districts at least 2 years ago. Some districts were very much on board, and they wanted to highlight the contributions of the LGBTQ community, and so they did some pilot types of programs. I was a legal guardian for my cousin, who was a Down syndrome lady, for 26 years. And I sort of know my way around some of the agencies that are involved in dealing with the needs of the developmentally disabled. And so I called up the Association for Retarded Citizens, and I asked them if they had any input into this law, because it is supposed to highlight the contributions of people who have had physical challenges, and they said no, they had not. They did not know of any other organizations that contributed any information. They did not have anybody to be sent into classrooms to do any sort of teaching or to help teachers to teach about the contributions of those who were disabled. But I thought it quite interesting because we all have compassion for the disabled, and in many cases a lot of laws are pushed forward because they are supposed to meet some of the needs of the disabled. In this case, I can't find any group that has really contributed or would be able to help teachers to teach about these contributions. Comprehensive sexuality education. I'm going to just talk about that briefly. It is the nickname or the acronym is CSE, and it seeks to change the view of sexuality towards promoting sexual rights for all children and youth, and for the purpose of experiencing sexual pleasure. As Christians, we believe that there's a purpose for sexuality, that God created two genders, that we are designed to be married and to experience the pleasure of marriage, but for the purpose of bonding and for the purpose of raising children. But CSE has a separate kind of goal, and that is to just have children experience sexual pleasure. To that end, CSE promotes homosexual and bisexual behavior and normalizes oral and anal sex and masturbation through lessons using, in many cases, very explicit materials which might violate the 2009 New Jersey obscenity law. There is a 2009 obscenity law in New Jersey, and if you read that law, and then you look at some of the materials that I've looked at, it seems to me that these materials are definitely in violation of that law. The sexualization of children promotes early sexual independence and quite often confuses children and moves youngsters away from parental values. If the teacher said it's okay, if the school is teaching it, it must be okay. And this is what most children will come away thinking. Organizations such as SIECUS, Advocates for Youth, and others, there are a whole list of them, and they are in your booklet. You can kind of read them. Amaze, answers from Rutgers, materials from Planned Parenthood, all of these materials use very explicit materials. Some of them are very cartoon-like, they're very colorful, they're very kid-like, but by and large they promote gender confusion, they fail to establish abstinence as an excellent goal, and promotes abortion and contraception. Abstinence is the law in New Jersey. Lots of people don't know that because I found lots of materials on the Department of Education site regarding protecting the rights of the transgender population in schools, but I could find no materials on promoting abstinence education. CSE refocuses children's thinking from very young ages towards sexuality, which many believe is not the goal of public education. If you took a survey of many parents, they might say that sexual education is not even appropriate for public education. However, it's being pushed as being a protection, protecting kids from abortion, from pregnancy, and from sexual predators. The opposite seems to be true. Issues of consent are very unclear, and peer-to-peer sexuality is promoted. In New Jersey, there is a law called the Romeo and Juliet law. And some of these laws are talking about if minors have sexual intercourse with each other, what does that do to the consent of both parties? For example, if two 13-year-olds choose to have intercourse and the young lady gets pregnant, what recourse do the parents of the young lady have towards a 13-year-old if both of them consented? It gets pretty dicey. New Jersey's LGBTQ mandated the LGBTQ mandated social contributions curriculum was pushed by Governor Phil and Mrs. Tammy Murphy, as Greg said, and many on the State Board of Education, and the new 2020 sex ed learning standards are taken from the goals of SECUS and other people advocating extreme sex ed. SECUS is a decades-old organization. It is a group of people whose purpose is to sexualize and to promote any type of sexuality that's possible out there. We have a book out here that you can purchase for $10, and half of it is research, and it really talks about the sexual holocaust. It's not a revolution anymore. It's not the same. It's talking about pornography and the harms of pornography in our world. Over 1 billion people are addicted to the worst type of pornography, and it is connected with so many activities, with sex trafficking, with abortion, with all of the sexually transmitted diseases, etc. And this book was written by a young woman who is a homeschooling mom of 4 and her pastor mentor, because they had seen so much harm being done to young people in Upper New York State. And they do a lot of, her organization is Feed My Sheep, and she has excellent webinars and videos. Very disturbing, but it's information that people should have, especially parents. Okay, critical race theory. Critical race theory is a philosophy that's descended from neo-Marxism, postmodernism, and critical theory, which was formulated in the 1990s. And critical theory was taught at the university level in Frankfurt, Germany. It includes concepts such as white privilege and white fragility, and adopts the Marxist idea that society consists of oppressors versus the oppressed. Those are 2 key words, and you must understand that vocabulary has changed its meaning in our current culture. It also exhibits the postmodern view that truth is simply a reflection of the biases of the oppressor class. The question in this worldview is not what is truth, but rather what is your perspective. And according to CRT, if you don't have the perspective of an oppressed class, your views are invalid. CRT only grants moral authority to those it sees as oppressed. Critical race theory says minorities deal with racism and white supremacy in everything from education and job hunting to everyday actions as simple as going to the grocery store. Critical race theory claims our entire legal system is in place to uphold white supremacy and keep minorities down. We all know that there have been many negative things that have happened to people of color over many generations. I think my question after reading and reading and reading about critical race theory is that the answer in public education? Because it really puts down young people who in many cases start to think as a person of white heritage that they are guilty and responsible for every single thing that has happened to everyone else. And that's kind of a very tricky situation to put young children into. Here is a visual of social and emotional learning. Social and emotional learning would be something that maybe most people would agree is a very excellent thing to promote among your children. You want your children to be responsible decision makers, to have good relationship skills, to be socially aware, to be self-aware and self-managed. And you can see in the blue circles that sort of encompass this whole circle in the middle that we have SEL instruction and classroom climate. We have school-wide culture, practices, and policies. We have authentic partnerships. We have aligned learning opportunities. And as we move out, we get into a bigger and bigger picture. We have the classroom, we have our school, we have our family and caretaker, and we have the community. But Marisa will share more about good social and emotional learning and that which is not good and is very destructive to young people. The New Jersey Department of Education defines many terms. I found so many delightful things as I was searching through lots of information. And there's a glossary that the Department of Ed puts out. And there are several terms. And I found that most of the terms defined have to do with sexuality. And so if you don't know some of the definitions, don't worry about it. You can go on the glossary and you can find out. And before Greg says a couple of things about a few of these terms, I just want you to note what's in the yellow box there, that parents need to know that they can opt their child out of the sex ed learning standards. That's that booklet that you received. Parents cannot, however, opt out of the LGBTQ contributions curriculum because it's interwoven throughout the curriculum. And something very important, there's something called a 7-page transgender policy, and in that policy it distinctly states that a school district shall accept a student's asserted identity and parental consent is not required. So that if Johnny comes to school, goes to his trans locker, changes clothes, puts on a wig, some makeup, wants to be referred to it as with a girl's name, then goes throughout his school day as a female, he could then change at the end of the day, get on the bus, go home, and his parents are none the wiser. The parents may not be told that this is going on.
Page 15 is the summary.
Right, but that policy is 7 pages long, and it's part of an 11-page resource, all for teachers, administrators, and even other students. They have to know what the rights of their fellow students are to be called, by the pronoun that they wished. Did you want to say something, Greg?
Oh, do I ever. I want you to take a look at that third column where the dots are. Look at the very top. PEP and PrEP. Go to your handout, page 10. You'll see the highlighted section there. That's there 35, but our page 10. See at the bottom of that highlighted section and the very last line in that highlighted section, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this one. Identify medically accurate sources of information about STIs, that's sexually transmitted infections. You and I, who are my age or older, knew it as STDs, disease. Actually, infection's probably a more accurate term. Including HIV, such as local STIs, HIV prevention, steps to obtain PrEP and PEP testing and treatment resources. PrEP and PEP are drugs. These are medical treatments. If you watch any TV at all anymore, you're going to see these constant commercials about PrEP. Get on PrEP. PrEP is available. You have to have an HIV negative test first, and then we'll get you on PrEP. You know what PrEP is supposed to do? It's supposed to prevent you from getting HIV/AIDS. After all, we're going to teach you how to have anal sex, so let's teach you to get this medication. Notice here, too, it doesn't say anything about a parent being involved. Doesn't say who's going to pay for this, but steps to obtain PrEP and PEP. What steps? Who's making the steps? So PrEP also can be a toxic medication. Here's why. Now, originally, when they first made an AIDS cocktail that was actually a one-dose pill, it was called Stribild. Had 4 chemicals in it. If you were HIV positive, you went on that, and it's supposed to help you take care of that, because before that we had AZT, which I had a face-to-face meeting with Dr. Fauci in Washington, D.C. when I was still in the lifestyle. It was a quasi-pleasant one, and then he started. I started asking him about AZT and how toxic it was, and it was killing the patients. Not AIDS. Your drug was killing the patients. It was a toxic drug that was banned for human consumption. It was killing it was supposed to be a cancer drug. It was killing patients faster than any disease could possibly kill them. But he pulled it off, put it back on the market to treat AIDS. So I was telling him what was going on with my patients. I said, AZT, once they get on it, they seem to decline faster than they do from the disease itself. Then he started asking the nurse questions. And what does the nurse do? Doctor asks questions, you give them a report. So he starts asking me these questions, how many Kaposi sarcomas are you seeing? How many pneumonias are you doing? Then he asked, what about wasting syndrome? Wasting syndrome. Yeah, I know wasting syndrome. You're inducing it. Because several of his protocols had you on antifungals, antivirals, antibacterial medications all at the same time. This wasn't the metabolic thing called wasting syndrome. You induced it because you sterilized their bowel. So this is the nurse telling the doctor what he did, and that's when he looked at his watch and said he had to go. So, PrEP is 2 of the medications. They're now coming up with other medications. One of the medications says it can't be given to anybody unless they're 77 pounds or greater. By the way, your average 6th grader is 77 pounds. So, PEP is an emergency preparation. Should you have sex with someone who is HIV positive or has full-blown AIDS, and you find out about it, that's an emergency, and you have to go to the hospital within 72 hours of having contact with that person, and they will give you some serious drugs to try to make sure that you don't become HIV positive. You have to go to the emergency room for this. So, who's taking the child to the emergency room? Are they going to tell the parent? They're going to call the parent? Because now children have rights. Actually, they don't. You have rights over your children, but they're trying to make you think that you don't. This is extremely dangerous stuff, and it's in the mandates. Drugs for your children, 8th grade. This should concern everybody. How is this being done? How is it being implemented? Who's involved? And one of the things Gay sometimes mentions when she's doing that little circle thing is that the goal is to make sure that your school is the everything. The dentist will be there, the pediatrician will be there, the counselors will be there. The only thing you're going to be doing is you're going to be the custodian of your child, the caregiver. We're the ones that will teach them and show them how to live, what to think. We'll take care of all of it for you. Nutrition, everything, we'll take care of all of it for you. Mm-hmm. You just clothe them and give them a place to sleep. Of course, you bear them and have them and give them a name, but, that's not important. What's important is they're our children now. They're our children now. And you'll hear this from any staunch union member of any of the education unions. When it comes to your tax dollars, that's our money now. No, it's our tax dollars. No, it's our money. Who's our? No, we gave the government money and we are the overseers of it. No, this is our money. It's our money. It's education's money. It belongs to us. Mm-hmm. But that's literally, I had a lobbyist from the OEA when I was in Ohio lobbying, told me just that. That's our money. That's our money. But I just wanted you to know about this. Drugs being pushed on your children.
Yes, and just what Greg said, the school is going to be the center, the the group that is going to not only meet all of your needs, but they're going to tell you what to think. And as you know, President Biden is changing the Title IX, or he'd like to change Title IX, which is a law against sex discrimination, and it's going to push more and more of the woke philosophy regarding transgenderism. And in order for schools in every state to get federal money, they are going to have to go along with all of the woke teaching in order for certain schools to receive lunch money or snack money and other funds from the federal government. Okay, here's a sample lesson from Garden State Equality, which is a...
Not to be confused with us.
Yeah, they're a pro-LGBTQ group, and they developed some teaching modules, and they were very willing to come in and do some teaching for teachers so that they would have some sample lessons. And I picked this one because you must understand that the highlights of the LGBTQ community are not just maybe the arts, like Alvin Ailey was a great dancer, but we have to then focus in on his sexual preferences. And also, in this particular case, Sakia Gunn was a young lady, a teenager. She and her friend were killed by some young people, and she had three things kind of going against her in the mind of the people who are representing this lesson. She was from a poor neighborhood, she was a lesbian, and she was a lady of color. But I have highlighted the red because I think it's very significant. The 2003 murder of Sakia Gunn in Newark, New Jersey, was a hate crime. This is when hate crimes were really starting to be talked about and labeled as such. It mobilized friends and family into action and marked a turning point in Newark queer history. The events that led up to and followed their death, it was Sakia and her friend who were killed, demonstrates how structural systems of social control intersect and overlap in numerous ways, influencing beliefs and actions of people across and within groups. The murder of Sakia Gunn laid bare the understanding that in a society where multiple systems of hierarchy and control play roles in people's lives every day, the media is no different, making value judgments in who and what gets covered in the news every day. In the news cycle. In learning about Sakia Gunn, their death, the two young ladies, and the response to it in the community and across the local and national media outlets through analysis of primary and secondary materials, students can develop an understanding of the persistence of systems such as patriarchy, hypermasculinity, homophobia, and racism, with the hopeful result of developing a comprehensive toolkit to confront and dismantle them. So now you've got integrated critical race theory, the LGBTQ agenda, racism, and a whole lot of other things that are sort of rolled into one. And this was a lesson that I believe some of those school systems who initially taught a lot of the LGBTQ contributions lessons as early as maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago, used this lesson as one that was very, very crucial. Garden State Equality is the one that wrote this lesson and is an NJ LGBTQ advocacy organization which has written modules, which if you inquired at your school system, maybe some have been used in your school system as well. And here we see a group using their advocacy message to advance the principles of critical race theory, among other things. Okay, is there a connection among New Jersey's LGBTQ education agenda, CRT, SEL, and the new sex ed learning standards? And absolutely. These are common themes that I kind of put together, and with a lot of reading and listening to a lot of YouTubes, and there's a lot of great stuff out there, but you have to kind of put some time in to truly understand what is going on. Liberation from oppression, extreme government involvement and government money. way a lot of times, loss of parental rights in lieu of government control, entitlement without effort, fosters a victim mentality with an extreme focus on singular causes for life's problems, such as skin color or sexuality. That means that most of our problems are, focused in, and the cause was singular. Desensitization of all in the name of tolerance, and discarding of traditional biblical family, sexual, and gender values. Okay, and then we developed a chart. These are some common terms, and we used to kind of think of them in a certain way: tolerance, racism, diversity, sexuality, and gender. A traditional definition, which some might say is a biblical definition, is, for example, on the left, and the woke definition is on the right. I'll just choose one. For example, you can read them yourself. The sacred union of man and woman under sexuality, under the blessing of matrimony, to procreate God's children. And the woke definition is the ultimate meaning of life to be experienced in any and all forms imaginable. In that book, The Sexual Holocaust, it discusses the idea that anything goes. If you can think of it, you can do it, and it's your child's right to do so. And then, of course, under gender, the two alternatives of most animal species, we believe that as Christians, God created male and female, and then the woke definition, we're still trying to figure out what a woman is. So there we are. Okay, we are going to introduce our newest member, Marisa Grado. She's a wonderful contributor to so much of our information, and her master's degree is in educational leadership. She has experienced at least 16 years as the superintendent of the Dayron School, as well as a special ed teacher and an educator, and she has her own business supporting private schools and parents who homeschool. So with great pleasure, and we're so grateful, she walked into our office and said, "The Lord sent me to come and help you." And we knew it was an answer to prayer.
Turn it off. Yeah. I'm sorry, did I mess things up? What's new? Okay, I'm sorry. There we go.
That's okay. On? Oh, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gay, for that lovely introduction. How are you all doing? It's a lot of information, right? Don't worry, we're going to leave you with some hope. I'm in charge of the clicker also. Okay, right. Yeah. Here we go. I'm going to, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip right to the New Jersey Department of Education's definition of social and emotional learning. We're going to break down their definition on their website. SEL is the process. I'm going to stop right there. Process is not study. You study concrete areas like math and English language arts. The very definition of process is experimental manipulation and hypothesis testing. So let's not confuse the two. It's the study through which all young people and adults acquire and apply knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities. Greg discussed at length, and I'm not going to go over that again. We know that that is a subjective position. A healthy identity is based on your belief or value system, so it's not the same for everyone. To develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, whose goals? Feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. Now, if we just discussed that healthy identities is subjective, is it personal or collective? That seems very contradictory. So, in a nutshell, this definition is an experimental manipulation based on a subjective idea of healthy. Well, what is that exactly that we're teaching in schools that is now mandated throughout the curriculum? What that is social and behavioral science, which is the study of human behavior. How do I know this? I spent 16 years working in a for-profit, out-of-district placement for students with special needs. What does that mean? If your child cannot be serviced in their home school district, they get sent out of district. Tuition for every student is about $70,000 minimum per year, plus the cost of their personal aid and transportation. So about $100,000 per student per year. That's a high level of accountability. In the last 7-8 years of my career there, I trained supervisors and principals, many of whom went off to be superintendents and directors of special services. We were trained, and I trained them to look at every memo from the state with a very critical eye. We have a high level of accountability when you're spending $100,000 per student. And one of the areas that we incorporated in our school was applied behavior analysis, which is exactly this, the study of human behavior. And for every student who had any type of ABA involved, there's a high level of parental involvement, because you're crossing into a realm of experimental manipulation of subject matter. And so it requires parental signatures and a great level of oversight from, as you can see from the definition, social and behavioral science degrees in public health may be applicable to many disciplines, including sociology, psychology, and more. This is a dangerous area to cross over into, and it's widespread in our public schools as we speak. Merriam-Webster's definition of health is the condition of being sound in body, mind, or spirit. Health includes mindsets, values, and behaviors. So how did we come to this point where this is such a big part of public school curriculum? Well, it begins with funding, if you follow the money. Funding from the U.S. Department of Education through Vocational and Technical Education Act of 1998. These were for VOTEC schools. If you remember, students who were deemed maybe going to be unsuccessful in a traditional public high school went off to a VOTEC school. And this was a great concept because they were trained in areas where you all probably have had difficulty getting service providers to come to your house, contractors, or finding a good mechanic, or any of these skills. The U.S. Department of Education was funding some of these programs so that they can enlarge those programs. That was a great thing. But in 2006, we saw the standards change to career and technical education. And in the vision and the mission of every standard, it explains exactly what those standards aim to do. And this is where we see that the Department of Education started to use words like attitudes and behaviors. So the vision here in 2006 is to change the attitudes and the behaviors of our students to make them more competitive in our global economy here. We really, it sounds good, but we start crossing over from content areas to strategies. And when you intermingle concrete content areas of study with strategies, you get some convoluted ideas. So strategies like teaching to the whole child sound really good. But what does that mean? It means that you're sitting next to a student and you're going to work together as a group, and you need to be cooperative and you need to be tolerant. And so the very ideas that we're looking to promote through social and emotional learning, like individuality, are not being promoted. It's being tailored towards one way of thinking. The 2020 standards are so dangerous because they came out during the pandemic, and the New Jersey Department of Education said, we'll give you 2 years to implement these standards. And what that meant was that people were looking at them at different time periods. And so you couldn't have a collective response to these standards. And so we're kind of having a scattered response to it. But there's a dramatic shift and a change in what we're teaching. Instead of social emotional learning, the attitudes, the behaviors, and the subjective healthy identities being pushed in one area, they're now mandated to be taught throughout the entire curriculum. You can no longer separate them in any content area. Why should you be concerned about this? Well, we have dramatic learning loss from COVID-19, and we're not talking about it. We're not looking at scores of where our students are in New Jersey and talking about what we need to fill in those gaps. Instead, we're pushing social and emotional learning, which is only exacerbating the problem. We need to get back to focusing on the academics. And while the content of social emotional learning seems universally good, the key components are aligned to secular humanism, a religion recognized by the United States Supreme Court. So to say we don't teach religion in public schools is simply untrue. We're just not teaching our religion. And that goes for many religions. It's not just for Christianity. Many other religions are also deeply disturbed by an alignment to something that is not of their own beliefs. So here's what happens when you have a child in a classroom and they're being presented with information that's factual, like in math or English language arts, and it's intermingled with subjective positions. Your child is unable to differentiate fact from opinion, and that's a problem. The main study used to incorporate social and emotional learning in schools banks on your uninvolvement. The study states there are many factors that make it challenging for parents to be the sole primary role models and SEL teachers of their children, particularly in a globalized world. This creates an imperative for the idea of parent-school community partnership. So again, they're banking on the fact that you have no idea what social emotional learning is. You have no idea that these things are being taught or what it means to collect information from your child and then correct them. What does this look like in the classroom? Well, your child has to constantly be surveyed. So in order for me to correct your behaviors and your mindsets, I have to ask you what your values are. What do you believe? Now, if you have any students and you've tried to teach them Common Core math, you know you can't. So Common Core math puts the teacher in a position that only they can teach that math, because if you've had a child come home and you're trying to help them with their homework, the child gets frustrated and says, "Mom, Dad, that's not the way we learned it at school." So now I want you to take this same principle and apply it to something else that you're trying to teach your child. Maybe you've just come out of church, and maybe you're talking about biblical principles, or you're trying to teach a biblical principle, and your child says, "That's not the way we learned it." This is what's so dangerous about the widespread incorporation of social and emotional learning into your child's curriculum. You can't opt out, and your rights are being violated day in and day out. It is a U.S. law that you have the right to review every piece of written and digital curriculum that is presented to your child. And you have the right to opt out of things that you're uncomfortable with, especially in the area of surveys. But social emotional learning weaves those surveys into the everyday practice. So you're unable to opt your children out because it's happening on a day-to-day basis. And what happens is they're labeled as kindness programs. And so we think that they're really good programs, are all about me. What's an all about me poster look like? What are my values? What do I do on the weekend? These things sound very innocent, but they're not, because the information that's being collected is being collected for big tech. It goes into a very large database, which is then used, in part, to create these standards. That's why the vision is to change the behaviors, the mindsets, and the attitudes for a global position. I want to leave you with some hope, because I know this is a lot of information, and I know it seems, what can we possibly do about this? The first thing is, you must be informed. You have to show up at your school board meetings. I'm going to skip past all of this. You have to show up at your school board meetings. The Center for Garden State Families has put together an amazing parent toolkit. If you haven't picked one up at the table in the back, you need to. That's going to state all of your rights and all of your laws. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So this is an amazing, I worked on it with them, and I made sure that it was a short leaflet so that it was easy to read and easy to use. We also have some corresponding forms that you can use to opt your children out of some of the controversial material. Now, you won't be able to opt them out of everything, which is why you need to show up, which is why you need to support the Center for Garden State Families. They are the only organization in the state of New Jersey that will go to Trenton for you, that will advocate for you. And so the ultimate goal is school choice. You have to have the ability to take your child from public school and have that money follow them and be able to put your child in a place that aligns with your values. This is so widespread at this point in time, you're almost unable to get them out of the material in its entirety. But you can push back, use the forms. The other thing is, you must put yourself and your family back at the center of social emotional learning. These concepts are concepts that should not be taught at school, no matter what your belief system is. If you don't know what social emotional learning is or how to teach it, I offer a very easy to use program. You have to put yourself back at the center of this piece of your child's education, because whatever you do not teach your child, someone else will. Wherever you leave an open door or a gap of information, your child will learn from their peers, from teachers, from the school agenda. And I say this not because this is not an attack on your child's teacher or principal. As I said to you before, I've trained principals and supervisors, and most of them are waiting with bated breath on the next memo from the state. They can't even keep up with the things that are coming from the state and the things that they need to implement. And they're struggling. And many of them are not in line. Their personal beliefs are not in line with their professional responsibilities. So this is not a war against your child's teacher or the principal. The key here is to remain informed and active as parents, to speak up, to go to your local board, support Center for Garden State Families, and again, get involved. Get yourself a family-centered social emotional learning program. I know this was a lot of information. I hope we left you in a better place than where we started. I'm going to turn it back over to Greg, and I thank you so much for coming out.
It's late, and you probably have questions. We might have answers. And I know, like I said, this was a real dump of information. I know you feel like, and we didn't give you the half of it. We tried to show you the highlights of it. Here, the issue is this. You have to be involved. You have to be involved. You have to be involved. You need to show up at your school. Now, we have this piece of paper right here to help you opt your children out, your grandchildren, if you're a guardian, whatever it is. We have this piece of paper here. One of the things I suggest that you do is that we're giving you one copy, you make multiple copies, because your child changes every quarter, maybe to new teachers, and maybe there's multiple teachers during the day. You want to make sure not just that your superintendent has it, or your principal has it, or the guidance counselor has it, or whatever they call themselves now. You want to make sure that every teacher that teaches your child has been given this permission slip, this opt-out slip, so that there's no excuse, because we hear this all the time in our office. Well, I gave them an opt-out form, and then my child wound up in it anyway. Oh, you sent a form? Oh, we must have misplaced it. Oh, we must have da-da-da-da. No. This is why, too, as Marisa said, show up in person. And one of the things I didn't do is my usual brag on Gabriella Brandil. She's a retired school teacher, came out of retirement to take a deep dive into this cesspool of education, and God bless her for it, because a lot of the research that is here, she did it. She found it. She's developed networks with people and organizations from across, some of them across the world, and like I said, this is a global thing, and it's happening all over the place. So if you've got any questions, any specific questions, I could take them one or two right now, or we can, you can tackle us at the table. Yes? Marisa? She's dying to answer that question.
Oh, you need that in writing, because that is the basis for our school choice bill. We really need to be holding the schools accountable. You have rights. They're very clear. The problem is that many folks are not informed on what their federal rights are. They're going against the New Jersey Administrative Code. Your superintendent will be surprised when you present them with the laws that we have in the Parent Toolkit. You need the responses in writing and then send them over to us. We're already pushing it from a legal standpoint, but the more involvement we have, the more folks we have coming out saying that this is happening, the better chance we have at pushing school choice faster.
Because they're telling us that we're lying. You know, Bill Spady is out there exposing this. I just, in front of Sergio and with Bill there, showed him the drugs. He says, what? What? He couldn't believe it. How deep and how insidious this becomes. The laws, by the way, are on page, this will be 1, 2, 3. On this inner side page, you will see 2 laws, federal and state. These laws are in effect. They have to give you permission. You have to know what's going on. You have to have that there. And Gay has something to say, and we have a question in the back, too.
I just wanted to answer the lady who asked the other question. I got a call the other day from a parent who said that she was at a meeting, and another parent noted the fact that the principal had said to a parent who wanted to opt out of the sex ed curriculum, you can't do that, because if you do that, your child cannot come to school. So that principal was in a direct violation of the law, did not know the law, and so I'm trying to provide them with the laws so that they can go and tell the principal that they are totally wrong, that there is an opt-out, and there has been an opt-out ability for many years regarding anything to do with family life, sex education, pregnancy, any of those topics. You can opt out of those programs in New Jersey. So I'm telling you, superintendents, and it's not a criticism of them, as they are overwhelmed, principals and many teachers do not know the law. So you have to find the law, you contact me if you need help, and bring it to them in person.
We also have attorneys. A letter from a lawyer fixes a lot of stuff. Okay? You may have your own attorney, and that's fine. We'll give them the information that they can write the letter for you. Point is that this has all been legally researched. We're not giving you anything that isn't true. We didn't make any of this up. We've worked our tails off the last few years when this came out to get you this information and present it to you. And the thing is that we keep finding out it's constantly changed. By the way, just in case you didn't know, our governor is one of the purveyors of all the woke religions. So he has now mandated, and the legislature has put it into law, that the newest religion that we're forcing on our children is climate change. We are the one and only state. We beat California on mandating this into our curriculum. Wow, good for us. Yay. So. Sir, you had a question in the back there real quick?
Yes, sir. What years is this school good for?
Yes, no, all the way up, because if you look at the form we handed out to you, there's 12th grade stuff in there too. Point is whatever grade it was introduced, it keeps going, okay? And ma'am.
Ask them for the materials. If you look at that opt-out form, you'll see a list of organizations that publish materials. Ask where are those posted on the website, or may I come in and look at the materials? I want to see them.
Oh, I took it.
That's a place to start.
Yeah, and what, the other answer, short answer to what you just said, what should we do? Worry. I know it's be anxious for nothing, but no, you worry about this. On our page 16 and 17 and 18, you will see information there about some of the stuff that they're doing. I was at a very small rural school district, and this was just the K through 8. Little tiny town, little tiny area, Greenwich, up in Warren County. And I was asked to come because they were having a curriculum meeting. So they didn't know who I was from Adam, except the parents knew, because they asked me to come. So I was there, and one of the parents asked, have you bought any new books to go into the library or new books for the curriculum? Oh, no, we haven't. So, well, that was a good answer. And then I looked at one of the other parents and said, now ask them if they've accepted any donated books. And that's another question to ask. So when I say worry, think the worst and try to find out if it's happening. One of the donated library, you'll see it right here on page 16 down here in the corner. The Rainbow Library is free of charge. The LGBTQIA people, -XYZ, will be happy to donate this to your school library so that your toddler and kindergartner can read the gay BCs and a whole lot more. Okay?
I want to add on to that. I want to make sure that my father-in-law actually left, because if I answer this, he might. He left? Okay. I'm really serious about this. A teacher has a state certification, and that state certification enables them to teach the content that the state puts out. So a district may not approve the standards. They're few and far between, but it only takes one rogue teacher who maybe isn't even aware that the district hasn't approved. And if you think that doesn't happen, it does. I will be the first person to admit I never, ever thought any of this would affect me and my family the way that it has. My daughter, I have a 14-year-old and I have a 6-year-old, and we're in church every Sunday, twice a week, and I thought, well, I know the standards and I know what's happening, but a year before the rollout of the health and sex ed standards, a teacher was teaching anal sex in our district, and the only reason why I found out was because my daughter came home extremely disturbed. And I repeatedly asked her, what's wrong? I thought maybe she had gotten into like a little argument with one of her friends, and she really didn't want to tell me. And she said, it's nothing, it's nothing, it's nothing. And I pressed and I pushed, and she said, it's just, I learned about something in health class today. I didn't even know it was a thing, and I feel gross. To a child, that is a moral failure. They feel like they have done something wrong because they know they should not be hearing what they're hearing. They know this instinctively, and it's just one teacher. It only takes one teacher. There are no ramifications for that teacher because they could easily go back and say, but it's on the state website. It's a state mandate. Well, we didn't approve it in this district. I'm sorry. Well, my daughter can't unhear what she's heard already.
Bingo. Yes. Yeah. Good point. Good point. Very good point. And if I could go just a little bit, this is the sexual exploitation of a minor, and that's why it has to stop. The biggest thing here, you're an adult hearing this. Now, we're talking about children who are minors. Minors cannot consent. Minors belong to their parents. This is breaking the law, and now we need plaintiffs. I've got some lawyers, but we need plaintiffs. One, this LGBTQ education law, that is a religion. It's a faith-based assumption. No one's born gay. We got the evidence. The nail is in that coffin. It's good. It's buried. It's 6 feet under. The point is that you are forcing a belief system on our children. You have now endorsed a religion. And that is a violation of the First Amendment. So, this secular humanism, LGBTQ is part of the secular humanism religion declared by the U.S. Supreme Court as a religion, and we need to go to court and stop this. Yes. Some of you are Sunday school teachers, and you're going to hear this. It's going to come out. This stuff is everywhere. Once you start doing it to one child, you're doing it to another. And don't forget, what Marisa just said about that teacher, how many other teachers are there going far beyond that, who have their own agenda in teaching your children things? This is why we have to have absolute school choice in this state and across this country. And Gay has something to say.
I just wanted to say in regards to several things. One thing, if people have a lot of time, grandparents maybe who are retired, and they wish to know what kinds of books are in the school libraries, you can contact me. I have lists of books, and there's something called Go Follett. Follett is a very old publishing company, Follette, and you can put your zip code in, and you can bring up your school library, and it should give you all of the books that are there, and you can compare it against the list that I have. I have upwards of 800 different books that people have been concerned about, as far as their topics. A lot of the books are written as fiction in middle and high school, and they're in libraries, and they are vehicles for some of this very objectionable stuff, themes like incest or rape or homosexuality, whatever. And so you can also ask, we visited a superintendent down in South Jersey, and we asked if they had donations of library books, and they did say they had a rainbow library, but the superintendent, the director of curriculum, and the head of the health and phys ed, they went through them and they vetted them. So that was their standard. I don't know if it was, in agreement with most people or not, but that's another whole issue. And another whole issue.
And they tell you they're Christian.
Right, what does that mean? Another issue is what's in the databases. Databases like EBSCO and Gale, they are databases that kids use with their Chromebooks to do research. They might do a topic. They would pull up a topic, say they were told to do a report on abortion, and there might be facts about abortion, but some of those filters are very poor, and they would be directed to local abortion clinics, or they would do a topic for a third grader on toys, and what would come up would be sex toys. So watch your kids when they're doing research, or your grandkids online, and ask them who's filtering, how easy is it for kids to get through those filters, etc. So those are just two things.
Maurice's got one thing to say in regards to that last question, and then I got one little point I need to make to you, and then I'm turning this over to Sergio. Sergio, and I want to thank, we do have a question in the back.
I want to thank you for that question because we don't normally hear I don't normally hear those kinds of questions, and I was taken aback because it's such a great point. File a HIB report. Harassment, intimidation, and bullying, and that's actually something that I've pushed towards a legal matter as well, filtered in with this, because you're exactly right. It is harassment, it's intimidation, and it's bullying. But the HIB law is a very serious one in New Jersey, and if you make that report, again, it's another piece of documentation that keeps us covered and moving in the right direction.
And keeps them accountable.
Yes.
The man in the back. Document. You've got to document everything that happens, and make sure you do that. Document. Nothing happens if it isn't documented. That's one of the first things they told us when I was a nurse. They told us how to make a bed, change a bedpan, and you're going to get sued if you don't document. So that's what you got to do.
And please reach out to me, because my current, one of the things that I'm also doing is supporting parents who are pulling their children from public school. They're not ready to put them in private school. They can't. And they're unable to homeschool for whatever reason. So I am putting things in place currently for that. So if that's your situation, please reach out to me.
Yes. But that's an excellent question. Thank you for saying that, because once the damage is done, it's done. And then with impunity, I'm the teacher, you're the parent, you're stupid. And that's how some of them really do act. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
My question is, how can I address outward that the need of funding the program available from, the kids that are suffering, like my son, because autism did suffer a lot, and a lot of loss, and friends, they changed they grew beard, mustaches, when they came back, nobody knew who he was. He had a beard and mustache. And I'm fighting for social emotional health. I won't ever say it again.
Yeah. Good for you.
Fighting for social emotional health, especially kids with special needs. But they actually spent $75.
We have a lot of families right now that are claiming that their children they want their children to have IEPs because they want to pull them from the public school. You actually have one benefit that you can push for getting them out of districts, because you get a choice of schools then. You could, if you want to talk to me after that, after.
Well, again, that's another story too. Local school boards can do that. There is a doctrine called the doctrine of the local magistrate. That means like the school board members. Folks, this is where we're going to change everything. We start from the bottom and we work our way up until we kill the king. Okay, and we are really out of time. It is 9:07, and it's time for us to wrap up. We're going to be at the back table. I'm going to turn this back over to Sergio. I want to thank you all for staying for 2 hours to hear this awful stuff. God bless you. Thank you.
Hey guys, thank you. Before we go, just a couple quick words. Thank you, Reverend Greg Quinlan and Garden State Center for Garden State Families. Sorry, brain's running. I appreciate one more round of applause for these folks and their time and their work. Thank you. I'll be very brief. You can tell I'm a bit under the weather, and my voice is shot. We've all had a long day, and this has been great. Thank you. We need to hear that. We need to be challenged with all this. We appreciate it. Number one, Greg wanted us to do this before the election. We need to vote. Okay, we have to vote, and I know we get that as Christians, but we have to understand our responsibility for Tuesday to be informed. We need to know our school board candidates. Bear with me for just a moment. Bill Spady was correct, and we misconstrue this in our understanding of politics and society. The cultures change at the local level. National candidates in elections are downstream from local politics. If you don't influence the local elections, you lose the culture. It's the town councils, it's the county commissioners, it's the boards of ed. So everybody comes up to me constantly. I'm a pastor at this church, pastor of outreach. I'm in Manchester. By the way, if you're in Manchester, I have a gentleman back there. Michael, can you raise your hand? Mike's back there. If you're in Manchester, need information, or want to help out in Manchester, see him right after, please. But people ask me all the time, and I don't know your town, so I don't know all the board members in Brick. I just know I'm in Toms River. My best advice is call your neighbors, talk to your friends, find out like-minded conservatives. You've got 4 days to get a conversation going. If you go to Grace, you can, or if you don't go to Grace, you can certainly email me and ask, and I'll try and get in the right direction. You got to talk to local people, and I would talk to your local parties and find out who they endorse. Notice I didn't endorse any party. There's all kinds of parties out there. There's Democrat parties, there's Republican GOP parties. Wherever you think your values line up, contact that party, go on their Facebook page. You will see their endorsements of the anti-trans candidates. You got to know before you're walking on Tuesday, and I can't know it for you. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I know as we sit here and listen, we say, why are we doing this? It's not our kids. Our kids are homeschooled, a lot of them in the Christian community, and they go to private schools. And I would challenge the church with this. We have a command. The second greatest commandment says to love your neighbor as yourself. I understand our kids are safe, potentially, in private schools and homeschools. But those little kids in the inner city who don't know Christ are being taught the doctrines of demons. And if we care about their souls, we're going to be in this fight, because self-government is a stewardship. And I'm going to launch off that great quote at the back of Greg's sheet that says this: and the war, remember, is not just for society but for souls, not just for this time but for eternity. We're not laboring just for America. We have a higher goal. It's the kingdom of Christ, and it's the souls of men and women and children around us for whom we give an account as watchmen on the wall, and we want to warn them and call them to Christ. And that's how we're going to end tonight, is the gospel message. If anybody here doesn't know Christ, or they're not from a Christian background, we believe what the Bible teaches in a God, a creator God, who is also the judge, who has condemned all men to death and eternity in hell because of our rebellion. But in his great love and mercy, he came as a man, Jesus Christ, lived a perfect life, the life we couldn't live, went to the cross as our substitute to pay for our sin, died a horrible death, and rose on the third day, conquering death, to guarantee eternal life for anyone who repents and puts their faith in Christ. So I urge you, if you have not trusted Christ, to do that. That's our message at Grace Bible Church, and you can hear more of that by joining us on Sunday mornings at 8:30 or 11 a.m. If you'd love to come, if you're looking for a church, you're in the local area, if you're visiting, please join us on Sundays. So thank you again for everybody coming. I'm going to end with this psalm. Why do the nations conspire and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth take their stand, and the rulers gather together against the Lord and against his anointed one. That's Christ. Doesn't it sound like our culture right now? Let us break their chains, they say, and throw off their fetters. But the one enthroned in heaven laughs. The Lord scoffs at them, and then he rebukes the nations in his anger and terrifies them in his wrath, saying, I have installed my king on Zion, my holy hill. Amen. Isn't that good? That's King Jesus. Amen. And the psalm ends with, blessed are all who take refuge in him. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you that you are the King. We labor not for an earthly kingdom, but we labor for the souls of men and women and children by bringing forth the gospel of truth, and that gospel has implications. And what Greg and the team talked about tonight are gospel implications that we're called to be salt and light. So help us to be encouraged, even with all this dreadful onslaught of evil, and take our stand in the breach as Christians and Christ's ambassadors, calling people to repentance, and also speaking prophetically to a wicked culture that is defying God's anointed. We exalt him, we proclaim him, we ask that you bless us, we pray for your will in the elections, and if it might be according to your will, by your grace, that you give us righteous rulers and favorable leadership from the ground up that upholds the law of God and the law of the land. We love you, Jesus, and give you glory and praise. Bless us as we go out. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thanks, guys. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.